Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to add in a form. Avada comes with its own set of forms, which is handy. They're like gravity forms. They're a bit simpler actually, but it allows you to create a form on your site. I have 2 or 3 of them already without having to add an extra plugin. So it has its own form builder. I'm going to create a form called test because every form must have a name. I'm going to add a couple of fields in and just show you how it's configured. So once I have created the form, it'll open up a form page and I need to add in a container, at least one container. So if I click on this backend builder, I must add in a container. So I'll just add in, there's many different types of containers. I normally just use the one-to-one container. And then I need to add elements in. So now, I've got somewhere to start building the form out. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to click on the text field. There are about 20 fields there. I'm going to pick this text field and I normally will add in a name. It'll auto-populate the name. So you got to have a label. So label shows on the front end and the field name is where it captures the data on the back end. Normally these two are the same. You can make the fields optional. So I'm going to say or required. So I'm going to say this one is required. I'm not going to put in any empty input notices or placeholder text because people know what the name field is for. Okay, what else will we put in? We'll put in an address. So if I go to text area field, that's different than this one. It's bigger. I can put in address, and it will auto-populate there. I'm going to make that optional, and you can put in some placeholder text, but here it'll say how many rows. So it'll be 4 rows. This is a bigger text field. If you play with that and test it out, you'll see how that works. So the last thing I'm going to add in is an email field. Okay, I'm going to add in an email field, and I'm going to call it email, and the field name is email. I'm going to make that required. So now we've got 3 fields. So they're the basics of what you want to capture. I'm going to add in a submit button. So let me just see. Yeah, submit button. And I'm going to make it centered. So you got to have a submit button for people to be able to submit the form to you. You can add a little bit of design elements here. You can make the button large, and then I can put in a hand if I want to. Let me see. Yeah, I'll put in a hand like that. So now you can see the button's slightly bigger than normal, and then it has a hand. One thing I need to do is I need to select this notice box element. What this does is if there is a problem when the person hits submit, they will see this notice on the screen. So if there's a problem, they'll see that. If it's successful, they'll see that. And you've seen that yourself on forms before, but you've got to add that in, and that should probably appear here. Or actually, no, we'll put it here. So that when somebody hits the button, they need to know that the email has gone. One last thing we'll add in is a reCAPTCHA. reCAPTCHA is the little I am not a robot thing that appears, and I'd highly advise adding that in, because if you don't, spammers will use this form and they will spam through that very quickly. It'll fill up your mailbox and it'll cause a problem. So I've added in the reCAPTCHA field. Now what we're going to do is set some options down the left hand side here, and I'll walk you through them. On the general option, I don't normally change anything because I don't want the form to be a members only form. I want everybody to be able to access it. Appearance, I can change some coloring and borders and things like that, but I don't normally. Submission, yeah, this is important. What we want to do here is we want to set what happens when somebody hits the submit button. So in this case, what I'd like to do is have it saved to the database. I'm going to hit update there. What that means is that the information that's collected is saved on the back end of WordPress. So you can go into it, you can click into the form, and you can see what the submission was. You also want a notification to go out. That's like an email. So you want the 2 things to happen. 1 is save it in the back end. 2 is send you an email. So I'm going to add in a notification. The notification label is just what is this notification. So it's an admin notification, but you can put in anything there. We've got to put in an email address for where the data is going to be sent. So when somebody submits the form, that's the email address that it's going to go to. If I type it in correctly, yeah. Got to have a subject. So I normally name the subject a website test form. But if it was a real, whatever the form was, you just put the data in there. Email from is I can put in a name. So this is not this is not an email address. Enter email from name. So in order for the email to come into you need to have this. So let's just say this is a website. But what you can do is, if you had the person's name, because I set up a name field, I can do it like this with a little label. So what's going to happen here is the email will come into me. It'll say website inquiry, and then I can say from, and then the person's name, because we've added in the name up here in this text field, it'll be the person's name. Sender email address must be an email address that is related to your website. If you don't put that, I know that kind of doesn't make sense, but if you don't do it that way, the email will not arrive into your mailbox, because your server is set up not to send emails from any other address except your own. So take it from me, this must be an email address that exists on your website. But down here, what you can do is, if you have the reply to, if you have an email field that you've added into the form, all you do is you add it in with a couple of brackets, left bracket and right bracket, like that. What that means is the email will come in with all this information, and if I hit reply on the email, instead of it going to that address, which is my own address, it'll go to the person's address that that I had previously captured in the email. So I'm using two fields here. One is name, and the other one is email, and I've captured those two fields in the form. Obviously, you can't use the fields if they're not in the form, but I always capture the person's name and the person's email address. And both of those should be required, actually. Is this required? It is. And is the email address required? It is, yes. Otherwise, the logic doesn't make sense. You can change the confirmation. There's a display message, but I already have that here. And you can have step-by-step elements, that it's step 1, step 2, and a progress bar and things like that. Most people won't use that. There's a privacy. I'm not capturing any sensitive information, so I'm okay. So anyway, that's the whole form. And now it's set up and it's called test. The last thing you need to do is add that form into a page, because although you've got the form created, it's not sitting anywhere. So I need to go to pages and I need to add a new page. And I'm going to call this page, I got to call the page something, so I'm going to call it test page. And then I need to build it out and put the form into it. So again, I click on this backend builder and I add in a container and I add in a one-to-one container. This is the clever bit. When I click on element now and I click on Avada Form, my forms are here. And I've created this one called test. You won't have any, but once you set up one form, then that's the form added in. I'm going to hit publish. And now what I would have is a page that it's with a form. So that's the step that's really important. You've got to add the form element in once you've created the form. If I hit preview here, it'll give me a preview of the form, hopefully. Yeah, and there it is. So if I try and test that form, if I hit submit, it's telling me that these two pages aren't configured. And it's also telling me that my reCAPTCHA isn't set up properly, but that's a technical thing. You got to go to reCAPTCHA.com, blah, 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 blah. Your web designer can only sort that out for you. So that's what the form looks like, and that's how you create an Avada form using the Avada Form Builder.